What's cracking, everyone? This is SchmuckuloN. Today, I feel somewhat educational. Why, you may ask? Well, I've been getting a lot of people over the years saying how New Zealand is so great. How New Zealand is free, we're a democracy, they like it here because of the scenic things of what Lord of the Rings portrayed in New Zealand is. You know, I get it all. So, today I'm going to give you a very definitive guide for you foreigners today here on the internet to New Zealand. Where is New Zealand? Now, if you look on this little globe map here, if you look here, basically in a nutshell, it's about 3,000 miles away east of Australia. It's between Australia and Antarctica. So if you go here, there's Australia, right? I mean, there's Australia. Here is New Zealand right here. That is New Zealand. This is New Zealand. We're a small country, 5 million people, and you know, you think that New Zealand is, you know, picturesque. Now, some of you people like to assume that New Zealand is picturesque. Some of you people like to also assume that New Zealand is equality. You think that, New Zealand is free and New Zealand has equality. So you'd like to think that, would you? You think that New Zealand is very diverse. You think that everyone in New Zealand has equality. You think that we have the best equality rights and the most equal opportunity rights here in New Zealand. You'd like to think that, would you? You would also like to come to New Zealand because of, the nightlife and, how Auckland is such a bustling city. And you like to think that everyone lives in cities like this. Clear blue waters, beautiful skies. You think everyone lives like this, you see? Do you think that we all live like this? Also, you like to think that the Maoris are this. You like to think that Maori people are like this. They're in their skirts, they're doing dances, they're keeping to their cultural aesthetic. You think that they're keeping to their cultural purposes, like you would also assume here in New Zealand. You like to think that, would you? Another thing that you think that we have here in New Zealand is the best justice system you could ever think of. You think that, we have human rights and, we have civil and political rights here in New Zealand, and we also have a right to justice. You think that New Zealand is such a bastion of freedom. You think that New Zealand has the best justice system and a very impartial one at that too. You would think that, would you? You would really think that too. Another thing you would also like to think that we have here in New Zealand is human rights and freedoms. No matter what age, ethnicity, religion or sex, culture as well included, we all get entitled to the same rights. We have an impartial system. We have human rights here. You would think that, would you? You would like to think that, would you? Well, I'm sorry, people, but I'm about to burst your fucking bubble right now because, to be honest, we're going to look at the actual facts here in New Zealand, because these are all assumptions that I've been hearing for years and years and years, and today I'm about to really unload the facts on New Zealand. 1, what do you see in this photo? What do you actually see? Well, from where I'm sitting, I see a very, very impoverished woman, someone who's struggling, and her kids are asleep in the car. And it's not camping either. No. She is not camping. This lady actually I think she lived in a car. They are living in a fucking car. That is New Zealand. People have been reduced to living in cars, storage units, substandard boarding houses, which actually still are a thing. And also, I actually did a thing about a decade ago under here, which I'll show you one of them. Also, we have the worst emergency housing here. The emergency housing here in New Zealand are government-bought motels or government-funded motels to charge exorbitant, backhanded rents, like somewhere in the hundreds to thousands, on families that are struggling. There are people with kids that live in a cube. Basically, they're basically pod people. That's the reality here in New Zealand. We also have a housing crisis here in New Zealand. We also have the worst market rents in New Zealand. Our market rents are fucking expensive. For a 2-bedroom house, you're expected to pay like $500, $600 a week, if that. And that is not in Auckland. That is here in Rotorua. That is practically here in Rotorua. Our rent market here is so fucking egregious, and you don't even get private rentals here anymore. Private rentals are barely a thing. Most of the time, they're all fucking through an agency, and the agencies are terrible. They give them to diversity quotas here in New Zealand, which I will get into very soon. I'll get into that very soon. But yeah, we have poverty problems here in New Zealand. We have major poverty problems here in New Zealand. Another thing that we have here in New Zealand is family violence problems. We are the worst country for family violence. And that is because our systems are fucked. Our systems are terrible here in New Zealand. A lot of people like to turn around and say, oh, but, New Zealand doesn't have these sort of issues. Yes, we do. We actually have a very bad family violence problem here in New Zealand. Also, domestic violence is a major thing here in New Zealand. So that is a massive problem. And I'll get to the police side very fucking soon, but we have a high rate of male assault females here in New Zealand. We have also a high capita of female on male statistics here in New Zealand. I mean, female on male violence is a thing here in New Zealand. And yes, you are talking to someone who is actually a survivor of that. I've been in violent relationships before, and trust me, it isn't good. I'll tell you this. The police are fucking useless, and I'll tell you that as well very soon. We also have gender biases in our family courts system here in New Zealand, and we also have major biases in our criminal courts system as well. Now, in the previous segment, I mentioned the male assault female and the female assault male the statistics here in New Zealand, just briefly. We also have an alarming rate of male assault female victims here in New Zealand. And yes, males, some of the cases are fucking hokey as hell. Some of the cases are absolutely garbage. Some of these cases are basically trumped up charges, and I'm not going to mention anything about mine, but I've heard firsthand some stories too. I've heard some serious allegations, and trust me, there are some alarming statistics as well, and the courts, they just want to get the conviction. There are some cases that want to get the conviction. Now, I'm not advocating on statutory rape, because yes, that is a thing here. But there are some cases that the court cases actually are fabricated. The court cases are mainly for clout. They want to, they side with the victim. And the men that get implicated in these also have that happen to them too. And I know I've heard firsthand stories of this. I actually had a friend who was implicated on the fact that he was actually just doing what he was being compassionate. And she tried flirting with him. He turned around and said no. She flocked off, and then next thing you know, during band practice, a bunch of cops came over and arrested our singer. So, they knew he was innocent, but they needed the conviction. That's our criminal courts here in New Zealand. Even if you're innocent, they still push the conviction. They said, yeah, we know you're innocent, but they're pushing for a conviction, so fuck it. That's our court system here in New Zealand. And our family court system, they are fucking ruthless. They have been criticised for gender bias in its processes and its application of law. They have been criticised by the New Zealand Law Commission. And there is a major gender bias in that, and I've witnessed that firsthand. There is no integrity in our justice system whatsoever. Another thing we also have here as well are gangs. Now, you might think that New Zealand is the most safest country in the world. You think that New Zealand safe as a house, and you might think that, oh no, New Zealand is so safe, and in New Zealand we don't have this sort of thing. Well, you are fucking wrong. You are absolutely fucking wrong. We have gangs up the ass here in New Zealand. Let me list you the prominent gangs here. We got Black Power, Nomads, Headhunters, King Cobras, Banditos, Hells Angels, Highway 61, the Mongrel Mob, and I'm going to get to them in a moment. The Rebels, Road Knights, Tribesmen, Killer Bees, the Red Devils, and the motorcycle gangs that we have here as well are the Devil's Henchmen in Timaru, the Filthy Fury in the Bay of Plenty and the Coromandel. We got the Greasy Dogs in Mount Maunganui. I mean, Mount Maunganui is meant to be very prominent. Well, obviously not. They've got Huhu and Tokoroa, and they started as a largely bush crew in the 1950s and a motorcycle gang in the 1970s. Got the Lice Breeds that are defunct, and they're defunct, and they were in Nelson. And you got Magog's motorcycle in New Plymouth. There's the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, and they're patched over to the International Club in mid-2014. And then we got the Satan's Slaves in Wellington. And let's look at the race-based gangs, shall we? This is where it gets very fucking interesting. You got 14K Triad. You got the 14K here in New Zealand. I wonder how that fucking happened. And they're active in Auckland. They're active in fucking Auckland. They're actually active in Auckland. You got the FBIs, who are the full-blooded Islanders, and they're a Pacific Islander gang in Wellington. And then you got the Tribal Huck in Ngaruahia. And then you got the Right-Wing Resistance, who are a right-wing skinhead gang formed by Kyle Chapman. And they're based in Christchurch, but they have presence across the country. And yes, we have the Fourth Reich. We have a skinhead gang called the fucking Fourth Reich. Very interesting. And also, let's look at the street youth gangs. You got the Junior Don Kings, and they were in Mount Roskill South in Auckland. You got the Darksiders, who are connected to Black Power in Wellington. Also, you got the Bloods, who are connected with the Mongrel Mob. You got the Dope Money Sex. They're in central Auckland, and they're also under the Crips umbrella. And then you got the TOC, who are the Thugs of Canal and Avondale. And they're in Auckland as well, and they're named after the street they hold ground on. And then you got the JCB, who are the Junior Crip Boys, based out in Otahu. Now, our government has done nothing in curbing the gang problems here. In fact, Jacinda Ardern, being the so compassionate and so humbling and so virtuous, gave $2.75 million to the Mongrel Mob to fund their meth rehabilitation program, and they got that so easily. They got it so easily, and yet they are a gang. They are an actual gang, and you know, they didn't even have to fucking see anything. And Jacinda, being the delusional fucking mongoloid that she is, she said, "Oh, I didn't need to see any statistics, and I didn't need to see anything. I'll just hand out the check. Just give him the checkbook, and give him $2.75 million." And all the wokies fucking were like, "Yay, Jacinda!" You know, it was pretty bad. She basically funded a gang, and you know, that they pulled the heartstrings big time and say that they changed. I mean, they did the I can change. I know you're a sandy little butthole. Oh. I don't think I'll ever be, you know, blah, 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 and I think I'm going to be born again. That sort of thing. And all the lefties fucking bought it left, right, hook, line, and sinker. That's a sad state of our country here in New Zealand. Our country funds gangs. Hey, I bet you the Black Power will fund a community housing program, and they'll get the checkbooks open. The checkbook will open again too. I better not give them ideas. Shit. Anyway, another thing that we have in New Zealand, and this is quite alarming, we have diversity quotas here in New Zealand. And yes, we do have them here. You like to think that we're all equal here in New Zealand? Think again. People like me, who are white, straight, you know, that doesn't politically align with the left, we get thrown under the bus, and we get served up as scraps. We get fired. We get barred from educational institutions. We get labeled far right by press organizations. We get excluded majorly, all because of the lack of melanin in our skin, and because the Maori people have basically pegged us as white devils, you know. And Jacinda Ardern is pushing the same narrative. You know, she's pushing the whole diversity and inclusion and equal rights and all this fucking shit, when it's completely the opposite. She's weaponizing one group and weaponizing herself and throwing people like me into poverty. You know, we're getting excluded from employment opportunities. We're getting excluded from housing. We're getting excluded from education. We're even getting excluded from fucking medical examinations by some people because of our politics. And now it's gone from race to the vaccination thing. Because I know I'm mentioning this on YouTube, but please don't kill this video. But the vaccination thing, if you don't get the coof, if you don't get the jab, you're basically labeled selfish, arrogant. You know, it's getting worse here in New Zealand. But you know, that's another thing as well. You know, I've been called selfish and I've been called ignorant, and, you know, I should look at the facts and everything. And yes, I have actually looked at the facts, and they counter their facts, and their facts is pseudoscience. But anyway, I'm digressing the point. But equality here in New Zealand doesn't exist, and the Human Rights Commission are fucking useless. They are fucking useless. You know, the SJW say that there's systemic racism here in New Zealand. And they say that, you know, Maori people and migrants are getting oppressed and all this fucking shit, and we need more diversity. But they're wrong. They're the ones that are actually preaching the racism. They're throwing people like me or people that don't align with them under the bus. Basically, it's a case of, oh, if you don't align with us, then you aren't that race, or if you don't align with us, you don't get your rights. And that's the thing. I have been denied many jobs over the years on the base of my race. On the base that I'm white. My parental rights were stripped away from me because I was white. The mother did what she did because I was white. And no, I'm not a white supremacist. I don't believe in white supremacy. I believe in true equality for everyone. And I'm not meaning just, you know, anyone on, you know, the left side of the equation. I'm meaning equality for everyone and not everyone, or not all. I want everyone to have true equality. You know, true equality, not this lefty drummed up where it's, you know, where everyone else gets the slice of the pie, but people like you, if you don't align with our politics, then yeah, sorry man, you get nothing. You can, you know, your life is ruined. You know, and that's what's happening here in New Zealand. We have diversity quotas here in New Zealand. You know. It's not a matter of who's good for the job here in New Zealand. It's the matter of diversity quotas. Like, oh, you're Indian, you get the best, you get this. Oh, you're a Muslim, you get higher. Oh, you're female, you get all the jobs. You know, or if you're Asian, you get the job. Oh, you wait, no, fuck off. You can't get the jobs. No diversity here. You know, there's too many white people. We don't want one more white fucking person. You know, that's the scenario here in New Zealand. That's fucking shit. That's fucking shit here. But anyway, now for those who have watched that fucking that Lord of the Rings movie, you thought that New Zealand was so picturesque, and you thought that, you know, we have a clean green reputation. Well, you'd like to think that because there's this article here about New Zealand's troubled waters. Our waterways are some of the most degraded in the developed world. You know, our government has done absolutely fucking nothing about our waterways. They haven't cleaned up shit. And our waterways are polluted as fuck. I mean, I'll leave this article here because there's a lot to unpack in this one, but you think that's picturesque. You know, you think, you know, You look at the pristine and the pristine and dramatic landscapes, and you see all these in the films, and you see all that, and you think, wow, this is a cool place. This is so picturesque, and it's such a major tourism draw card. It's such a major tourism sales pitch to the foreign markets, but it's bullshit. I mean, this is all photoshopped. It's all photoshopped. You take away all the scum waters, change the water to a different color. Oh yeah, mask it up a little bit. Yeah, okay. You can't do shit about it because people will just deny it and go, yeah, okay. You think that New Zealand... Yeah, see, this is an example. This is what our waters actually look like in New Zealand. Disgusting, full of algae, nothing to fish in. This is what you actually see here in New Zealand. Yuck. I mean, can't go salmon fishing anymore because the salmon's probably tainted or half of them are dead. See, and you think that New Zealand is a beautiful place. You think, even our cities have become the most polluted in the some of the most polluted in the damn world. You think New Zealand is so clean and green, but our cities are scummy. Auckland's a scumhole. Auckland is a fucking shithole. There's a lot of if you walk on Queen Street, if you see a lot of people sitting on the side of Queen Street, there's a lot of homeless people there. I used to be one of them in 2014. Yes, I was homeless in Auckland in 2014, halfway through with my ex. I used to live there in 2014, and I was homeless because of the housing situation there. And yeah, it's a fucking cesspit. It is not what you think. It is not what you think here in New Zealand, and especially in Auckland. But yeah, you think that New Zealand is great. But anyway, let's get on to the last one, shall we? Now, you like to think that New Zealand has freedoms. Now, you think that the police are fucking impartial, and you think that they're the best police system ever, and you think that they get on with the job. Well, you'd like to think that because back in 2019 they carried out unlawful searches after Christchurch mosque attacks, and they are the most incompetent lot out there. New Zealand police, the most laziest bunch of boomers out there. They pick on you if you're not wearing a mask, or if you're trying to protest, or if you're sending a mean tweet, or if you're speaking ill about the Muslims. That they'll come and knocking on your door and harass you. And when I told you about that, I was a survivor of female domestic violence on men. Well, the police don't do anything about it. The police actually fucking believe the women over the men. The police do absolutely nothing about it. And I'm living proof of that. The police do sweet fucking nothing about it. Also, the police don't do anything when it comes to other crimes. They just sit on it and go, yeah, okay, I'll just take it under advisement, leave it for a month, and then say, oh, no, we're not going to do anything about it. And I'm also another living example of that, because back in 2014, I got cleaned out. All my gear got stolen. I filled out a report. They did nothing. They sat on it for a month and did fuck all. They did absolutely nothing. They were useless. They were hard to deal with too. They are the most unreasonable bunch of lazy sacks of shit you could ever fucking get. New Zealand police are the most overpaid, overrepresented, overprotected bunch of thugs. You know, the police are just Jacinda Ardern's little communist squad. You know, this is the problems that we're having here in New Zealand. And unfortunately, there is fuck all to do about it. Sure, vote out Labour if you're a citizen, but National aren't exactly that better either. A lot of people that like to turn around and think that, you know, they know New Zealand just because of what Tourism NZ says. A lot of people like to assume that New Zealand is this bastion of freedom. A lot of people like to turn around and think that New Zealand is clean and green. A lot of people like to turn around and think that we're safe here in New Zealand. A lot of people like to turn around and think that we have an impartial justice system and we have rights, we have human rights. A lot of people like to turn around and think that we have the most equal country in the world. All because of what the propaganda says. Sorry for saying this, people, but you guys are wrong. You know, just because you want to get that Instagram selfie at Milford Sound or Mount Ruapehu, or you like to go to the Viaduct Harbour and think that Auckland's a fucking good place, think again. Think again. I'm from here, and I've experienced more austerity and injustice I've experienced a lot of injustice in my life. I've witnessed a lot of injustice in my life. I witnessed a lot of it. And what gets done? Public perception doesn't count. There's only a few of us actually that will speak out, and we still get silenced. We don't have freedom of speech here in New Zealand. We don't have freedom of expression or opinions. That's just to make us look good on paper. That's just to make us look savvy. Realistically, we're a socialist regime. We're run by a socialist weasel. You know, she has done some crazy shit, but New Zealand is actually not the fucking best country you could ever think of. And some people are delusional enough to turn around and say, New Zealand's the greatest country in the world. Well, we were. You know, Borat. Kazakhstan, the greatest country in the world. I think we should find a New Zealand version of Borat, because I think that's what we really have. You know, I think that's Tourism New Zealand, the New Zealand's version of Borat. But anyway, to close this, so foreigners, do you gullible fuckers still really want to come to New Zealand? Really? Do you? Do you really want to come here? I wouldn't. I want to get the fuck out of here.